So, hello, welcome to the latest in the Earn, Learn, Thrive LinkedIn Lives. And with me this afternoon, I have Rob Howard, who is the Online Language Centre and Business Language Training Institute owner, EFL Talks founder, teacher trainer, coach, writer. What hasn't he done? ITEFL Poland past president, past ITEFL BSIG joint coordinator, and the rest is in the description. So, hi, Rob. Welcome. Lovely to
Hi.
have you here. And
Thanks for having me.
we're going to be talking today about teaching one-to-one. And Rob and I were just saying before we came live on this stream how this is something that more and more people are doing, and yet it's still something that nobody actually gets trained to do. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about, what's involved in it, how you can make the most out of one-to-one. So Rob, so what was your thinking behind creating your book on teaching one-to-one, yours and your co-authors, I should say?
Yeah, well, for years, I taught in the classroom like everybody else and taught groups. And when I first started teaching online years ago, I found that it was much more effective when I started working individually with people. So I started almost exclusively teaching one-to-one close to 15, 16 years ago. And what I found is that there's so many differences that teachers aren't ready for when you make the transition to one-to-one, because like you said, there's no course. Nobody teaches any of this. And at the time, as we were talking, there was really only one book on the market, which has been off the market for almost 30 years now, that even talked about it, a book that we both have. I won't plug it.
It's
And
not in print anyway.
yeah, it's been out of print for years, which is a shame. It was a great book. And years ago, in fact, it was at an IATEFL BSIG event in, I believe, Warsaw. Andrzej, my co-author, both of us were on the BSIG committee at the time. And during his talk on one-to-one, he turned to me and said in front of the group, "Rob, you should write a book on it." And I said, "Oh, I'll think about it. Good idea." 2 years later, he called me up and said, "Rob, that book, let's write it together." And that was it. It took us basically about a year to put everything together that we wanted to. And we tried to cover everything that was covered before, but then we had to modernize this because back in those days, really no online at all.
Mm-hmm.
Things have changed so much. Coaching has become a big part of people and their learning these days. So I felt it important to add a lot of this new modern information to it and really give, as I put it in the title, it's an updated practical take on the teaching of one-to-one.
Mm-hmm.
So it came out of necessity.
Well, and it is, I can remember when I first started teaching, I had 1 year's experience and I got a job teaching business English in Lisbon, going, from place to place. And
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty much all one-to-one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a totally different way of working because, the dynamics of it is
Yes.
so very different. You can't kind of put people in pairs and monitor them. Um,
Yeah.
So
Well,
what do you think are the key, the key differences, if you like? What would you say?
first of all, it's usually content and context, because what I found, exactly what you found, is that people that were calling for business English classes or, any kind of ESP, anything specific, wanted one-to-one classes. And it was hard to put groups together of like-minded and
Mhm.
like-needed people. So you were forced to teach one-to-one. And when you think of a classroom in reducing teacher talking time and getting people to do the work together, all of a sudden you're 50% of that class.
Mm.
And most people aren't ready to handle that, number one, and let alone keep up the energy level to be engaging and to make things interesting. And I won't even talk about context or knowledge of business English or whatever. That's a whole another half hour we can do, which whenever you're ready, you know that.
Yeah.
But just dealing with it, I think the most important thing is what you have to realize is don't be afraid of it, because it isn't that much different. You're teaching, you're interacting. If you've done any coaching, um, this is the basis of what you're doing, and it's just being more active. That's the major change. But here is the bigger advantage is now I can specifically work on each and every person as an individual, which of course you can't do in a group setting.
Mm.
Now, as much as you try and as much as you want to, you've got the shy person over here, the very talkative person here, the knowledgeable one here, the one with the bad accent here. I don't have to worry about keeping everybody engaged at the same time. I can laser focus directly on that person's needs at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And this is wonderful
Yeah.
because you really, for teachers to feel a sense of accomplishment is when they see their students or their clients succeed. And this really is an adrenaline rush because you can see right then and there the effect that you've made with a student or a client when you
Mm.
switch to one-to-one. And that
Mm.
makes it wonderful.
Yeah. So there's something there, isn't there, about, really meeting the very specific needs, not just language needs, but
Exactly.
also, personality, way of working,
Mhm.
all of that kind of thing. Do you have,
Exactly.
like, in the book or like in your own practice or what have you, a particular way of approaching that? I mean, we could call it needs analysis if you like, but I think it's a little bit more
Yeah,
than that in a way, isn't it?
it is more, we called it needs analysis because that's what people know.
Mm.
Um, but what we do is it's in the book and we give the framework for a good one. And of course, every needs analysis has to be changed a little bit depending on what it is you do and what it is the client is looking
Mhm.
for. But we feel that right from the start, you have to do an in-depth needs analysis. And it's not just simple check the box. It's
Mhm.
more of a discussion, which, has come out of coaching,
Mm.
to really get down to what the needs of the student or client is and starting from there. And what you'll find with one-to-one, and we talk about this in the book, just like in coaching, that once you take care of one particular problem, now new things arise.
Mm.
And you're constantly doing analysis and reanalysis throughout the whole time that you spend with your student. And for me, it's interesting. I've had multiple students that I've had for 3 years now because things have changed from year one to a couple months to years down the road. It might start that the problem is confidence. It could start the problem is grammar. It might be vocabulary. And again, this is wonderful about the individual because I can do exactly what they need at the exact right time.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I can totally see that. And
Mhm.
it is that sort of being able to be responsive
Yes.
to the needs of that particular client, if you like.
Yes. And, we used to do multiple talks on this in the BSIG about, the fact of having adaptability in a
Mm.
classroom. Now, when you're talking one-to-one, you need to adapt like that because it can
Mm.
change in a matter of 5 minutes.
Mm. Mm. And this is why, coming back to the kind of thing that I teach, this is why I really think if you're offering those sorts of one-to-one lessons, you should be charging a decent amount, because this is not easy.
Of
This
course.
is very tailored and very, personalized, and that's what people are paying for. Because
Well,
as an experienced teacher, you have the skills
sure.
to do that,
Yeah,
which they're not going to get from somebody, who's charging $3 an hour on Preply.
that's it. And I don't call myself an English teacher. I call myself a facilitator of advanced communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between that and a standard English teacher is about $100 an hour because we do so much more. And I do lots of talks. I know you talk about this all the time, is the value that we're offering. We are extremely, I would say, well-trained, well-read, and professionals, and we're specialists, and we should value what we're offering to the client. So charge more money.
Yeah, well, because
You're Rachel. She's right.
you mentioned the word, value, and ultimately that's the point, isn't it? Like, it's
Exactly.
not about, this is the thing I bang on about all the time, but I'm going to bang on about it a bit more.
Oh, keep
It's
going.
not it's not about an hour of your time,
Mhm.
or however many times an hour of your time. It's about what is the result that the client is getting, and what is that worth for them. And
Exactly.
those are very different things, but it is, of course, also getting across to people what the
Mhm.
value is and
Mhm.
what results they're going to get, which is where the marketing comes in. But anyway, I digress slightly.
There's a very good line, and you can steal this, Rachel. Just give me credit. I've always said, I have people who often say to me, well, I can find an English teacher for a lot less money. And I always say, well, I can find a client who will value what I'm offering for the price I charge. We have to stick to our guns. For example, like you say, it's not just the teaching that we have of 2 or 3 years experience when we're starting out. It's the life experience that we bring. For example, in the States, I was a businessman. So I'm bringing a background of almost 50 years of education and experience to the classroom, and that has a lot of value, much more than 15 somebody who's 22 years old with no background and has just studied teaching. And we need to differentiate ourselves for our own good, to show the value to the clients out there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, so moving back to the process of teaching one-to-one, because I could talk a lot about
Yes,
the marketing side of things, but moving back to that, one of the things I think that people do find hard with teaching one-to-one is that energy, because you haven't got the buzz of the group, and you haven't got the sort of if you're working with somebody who is quite quiet, for example, or who doesn't really like speaking very much because they feel a bit self-conscious, do you have any sort of tips or strategies for keeping up the
well,
dynamic?
yeah, I've had a lot of interesting cases over the years. I've had stutterers. I have people who couldn't speak at all. I had people who give the every third word, just no confidence and too much thinking. Everybody is an individual, but what you'll find is, as you learn to draw them out, as you find what it is that can bring their energy out, it makes it a lot easier. Sometimes it can be a little tiring in the beginning. And a quite funny story is, my girlfriend, who now has won a lot of awards for her speaking, was originally my student online back when I was in Brazil and she was here in Poland. And for the first 2 classes, she could only say her name.
Goodness.
Yeah. Talk about a little tiring. It was hard. But once I found what it was that would draw her out, thing that would get her interest and get her to voice her opinion and let her know it was a safe space to try and voice whether it was correct or not,
Mm.
then she started building up the confidence, and she became not only a better speaker in English, but she also improved in Polish, and she's won speaking awards since then
Wow.
because of that.
Mm.
And you talk about what's the energy to keep you going. It's when you have a success story like that.
Mm.
I've had other ones where a girl that I worked with who stuttered uh, for probably 7 years, she was working with a speech therapist to try and reduce this. And after 6 or 7 months, we reduced the majority of her stuttering. And until I mentioned she hadn't stuttered once in the past hour, she wouldn't stutter.
Mm.
So, seeing that just an English class could do something like that, that gives you energy.
Mm.
And each one, just because everybody is an individual, each class will show a different way of giving you that energy.
Mm. So it's that sort of curiosity almost about the client and about what
Yeah.
they need and what will help them to blossom, if you like.
Well, it's exciting because we know as
Mm.
teachers, when we're working in the group, we have a superficial idea of each of our students. We don't know that much about them.
Mm.
And when you get into coaching or you get into teaching one-to-one, we get that much closer to them that, we're kind of in their mind a little bit.
Mm.
And this is what helps us to help them better.
Mm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Just to say, if anybody's watching live at the moment, please do feel free to say hi and to ask any questions or add any comments. Or indeed, if you're watching it on replay later, because we can come back and check the comments afterwards.
Or you
So
can come back to Rachel and I in Brighton in the next 3 weeks.
true, yes, we will be on stand number 66
Yes.
at the exhibition in the exhibition hall.
Yep.
So, what we've been talking about, there's a lot there, isn't there, that's about coaching skills for sure. I mean, is that something that you would recommend that people learn more about?
I really would. Being from a business background and I was sales manager all the way up into the higher executive level. So for years, I had been training other salespeople. And the skills that I gained along the way of training salespeople were things that when I took my first coaching course, I realized, hey, this is very similar. And I knew a lot of it, and it reaffirmed a lot of the things that I had been doing over the years. And that was extremely valuable to me because, coming into teaching from a business background, I had a different perspective.
Mm.
And I'm always looking at the objective right from the beginning, which I can't say all teachers are.
Mm-hmm.
Business English teaches us this, teaching one-to-one and coaching. We look more towards the end game, the objective.
Mm.
And I did neurolanguage coaching, which was great for me. It really helped me to rethink the way I ask questions. And I recommend, I think, every one-to-one teacher out there going forward into the future really needs to add more to their arsenal of weapons, when working with people. I
Tools,
use,
tools.
yeah, tools. I use tools in my talk. I actually used to use golf terminology and say,
Mhm.
it's having the right club for the right shot.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
sometimes you're a teacher, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes a trainer, sometimes a mentor. And, for me, um, I don't do just teaching. I don't do just coaching. I do a mix. I do whatever's appropriate to help that client, which client, student, whatever, at the right time. So I think it's invaluable that you take, an accredited course. This has always been an argument because people say, oh, if you're going to be a teacher, you have to be an accredited teacher, but they didn't care about being accredited coaches. And, you really should take something that's a legitimate course if you're going to invest the time and the money. And, it was a wonderful experience for me. And I just came back from a conference for it. So that's why I have a tan.
Oh, yes, of course, in Spain.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
I agree. I mean, I have a
yeah.
coaching diploma
Mhm.
from Warwick Uni, and I learned a lot,
Mhm.
even though I had previously done 3 years training as a counselor and psychotherapist.
Mhm.
I still learned a lot, so
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, and
Mm,
every bit of learning you can do, this is what makes us better. I know you have some great courses. I've seen your materials, and you have to keep on learning. Just a sort of side thing, when you look at what we have coming with AI, we will be, in theory, easily replaceable
mm,
if we don't keep adding to the tools that we have and continue learning how to get the human aspect, which is the advantage we have out
mm,
there. And I know you do this with a lot of your courses.
mm.
So
Yeah.
I'm plugging you now too.
Well,
So,
I totally agree, and the approach that I tend to take, tend to encourage people to take when I'm working with teachers and trainers, particularly teachers, I guess,
mhm,
is to think about, who is it that they're best placed to help? What
mhm,
help do those people need? And then
mhm,
take the bits of that they do again and again and again and again with everybody, and
mhm.
make that asynchronous,
Yep.
so that they can focus on the bits that are
Mhm,
more, live and personalized and so on. And in
mhm.
that way, I think everybody wins, because
Yeah.
the clients get a better service,
And
and
that's what we're
and
here
the
for.
teachers don't have to keep repeating the wheel.
Yeah.
Repeating the wheel? I think I've mixed up that metaphor there.
Repeat the wheel. Yeah.
Reinventing
It's
the wheel.
metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't
We'll
have to
cross
keep
that bridge.
reinventing the wheel,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, that's a good way forward, I think, and a good
Mhm.
use of the tech that we've got
Yeah.
is, you don't have to keep presenting the present perfect. Um, but you can use
You
those
can.
skills
I like
yourself.
to
Mm,
one thing that I like, and I agree with you, and I'm actually working on a asynchronous course right now for some people. I like to take advantage of that time face to face.
mm,
And for me, I'm not a huge asynchronous person because I think that being like this and being able to talk face to
mm,
face adds much more value, and it shows value to the client because
mm,
remember, we're getting more and more expensive and
mm,
we have to show what we offer. But yeah, there's so much repetition. And I actually, when it comes to those repetitive things, I recommend people out to other teachers for the
mm,
lower levels. Because, for example, I don't think an A1 should really be taking a one-to-one course.
mm,
I think if they can, they should be in a group course only because they need that interaction with other speakers.
mm.
And this is what I equate like the asynchronous to.
Yeah.
They can get the
Mm,
basics there. But when it comes to getting into the B2, C1, C2, in the specifics of their job, I think the importance of this face to
mm.
face, even though we're online face to
Yeah.
face, is for me, I think it's precious, and
Mm.
this is where we justify our money too.
Totally. Well, and this is what AI can't do.
Yet,
Yeah, it's going to be a while, I think.
and not so long. It's a good
Mm.
thing. Well, you're still what, 29.
Oh, yeah,
I'm almost
absolutely.
100. So I'm winding down now. You've got years to go.
Well, I would do if I was 29, but whatever, we won't get into
You
that.
will.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've talked quite a bit about the benefits, if you like, of
Mhm.
the one-to-one. Do you think
Mhm.
there are any things that are like downsides of teaching one-to-one?
The only downside I would say there is the limitation of hours that you have.
Mm,
It's I can only basically, if I'm going to work a 40-hour week, because I'm doing one-to-one, I can only help 40 people,
Wow, that's a
more or
lot.
less. Yeah.
Doing
So,
40 one-to-one hours a week, that's a huge amount.
well, if you were doing that,
Oh,
I do teach the I've been up to 80 hours a week. Darn near killed myself, but I when I was getting the online language going, I was working that much.
mm,
Now I'm able to be a lot pickier and work less hours.
mm,
But for me, I don't think that there is anything other than reaching out and giving you a hug or, doing cheers with our mugs that I cannot do online and I cannot do one-to-one. I don't see a downside to it at all.
mm,
I look at it as all positives. The downside I see for people who are thinking about it is they do need to get some idea of what they're getting into before they start, or they're going to
mm.
have a long, slow learning curve.
Yeah.
But once you're doing it, I don't see any difference at all.
Mm.
So the
Well,
downside, hours.
yeah. Well, I think that the limited number of hours, and I mean, personally, I think for most people, like sort of 20 to 24 one-to-one contact hours is the most that most people can manage without starting to feel burnt out.
Hmm.
And so, this is another reason why I do kind of encourage people to combine the two things, because then I
Hmm.
think you can, relieve a bit of that pressure
Hmm.
while still giving people a good result. But I totally agree with you about, sometimes people feel that online one-to-one is not as good as face-to-face, and I don't see that at all. I think the relationship absolutely can be built
I
online.
I sort of equate this to, you know, in the old days before cell phones and everything else, we had a telephone, and I would talk to my sister or somebody else on the phone. And does that mean that the relationship wasn't close because we're on a phone and there's a
Mm,
wire? And then we had, Skype and then going into Zoom and, here we are with
mm,
this. And we see each other. Now you and I have met a few times in person, but I believe we knew each other for 2 years before we ever saw each other face to
mm.
face. And it didn't diminish anything.
No, I
So
agree.
I think, this is it's a whole new world when it comes to video.
Mm,
And, now when you either FaceTime or do a video WhatsApp or whatever, I talk to my family back in the States and I love it because I can hang up where I can't do that face to face.
yes, fair
I
enough.
hope my sisters are watching.
So, okay, well, we're coming up to the half hour. Would you like to I think you've got your book on the desk, haven't you? Would you like to just show it to us?
Actually, I sold my last copy, but this is what the cover
Oh,
looks like.
postcard. Hmm.
And it's available on Amazon. It's one-to-one, and it's by myself and Andrzej. It's You can find it on Amazon easily. Just search for one-to-one and put Rob Howard. Usually, it will come up. And we also have the activities book, which we can talk about another time. And this is when you get into one-to-one and you realize that it takes a lot to come up with material if you need it. It's a way of helping you with that, so
Hmm.
you don't have to come up with your own material for every single class.
Brilliant. Thank you.